Mara and Sam will join us in just a minute. Hopefully I didn't just did I cut everybody off, Mara?
I think you did.
I couldn't get out. It wouldn't let me out. I didn't have any other option but to close the meeting, to open this
okay.
one. And I thought, oh no, if I close this, it's going to cut everybody off.
Yes,
And that's what happened.
It did. We
And I mean,
had just said, hey, Sam and I are going to leave, go to council. You can continue the conversation, but it's okay. We were pretty wrapped up. So
I hope it worked. I made Dan the host, so I'm not sure why I would do that, but still trying to figure out all this tech when we have multiple meetings going on at the same time.
Right. Welcome, everybody. Just give me just a second to get my notes transitioned over, and then we will get started.
Can you hear me, Mara?
We hear you great, Sam.
Okay, thanks.
Just getting some notes transitioned over, and then we can get started. All right, I think we've got a quorum of council, and it is a little bit past 7 o'clock, so I'll call our meeting to order. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Munson.
Here.
Councilmember Bystrom.
Here.
Councilmember Valento.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here. Our next item this evening is our Pledge of Allegiance, and I believe Dan may still be in the other meeting, so we may be without a flag this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. One item of note for tonight's agenda, we do have item 7D, which is liquor license and tobacco compliance failures. A quick item, there are public hearings that are required or noticed as part of that process. A quick item is to note is that if council wishes to consider a full range of penalty options, which would be both fine and suspension, there is another layer of notification that is required of our license holders that we so if we want to consider a full range of options, we should have a second public hearing to allow for that at our next meeting. I do know that we have a number of participants tonight that are planning to speak in public hearing. And so I would propose that we hold the public hearing, we gather some preliminary information and some feedback from the community, those who would wish to speak, and that we then table the topic until next meeting when council has an ability to consider a full range of penalties. Pete, did I tee that up appropriately? Just trying to set expectations of what's on the agenda this evening and what we would be considering.
Your Honor, members of council, it's a little bit complicated. I apologize if I can't just give you a real simple, smooth answer. There will need to be a second public hearing. If council wants to consider options like suspension and revocation, the record supporting those all has to be made at that second hearing. So if people want to speak tonight and they also would like to talk about the grounds for a higher penalty, that would need to be made again in the second hearing.
And we would have just the confirmed timeline. So we would have a round of public hearings. There is a separate public hearing that's required for each license. We would hold those tonight as noticed, as planned, and as we have some participants tonight planning to speak. And then we would have a second round of public hearings and then council's full consideration of those penalties at our next council meeting. So just wanted that clarification on the agenda this evening, if council is open to considering that. And Karen, go ahead.
If we do that, my understanding, and Pete can correct me if I'm wrong, is that for the liquor licenses, we would have to do a personal service on those for that public hearing, and then certified mail for the tobacco licenses. I'm not sure if the very next council meeting is going to be enough time for all of that notice to get that accomplished. Taking a look at the schedule, because we would have to do notification in the paper and then do that personal service. Some of these licenses are out of state. The license holder is out of state. Business, of course, here, but the owners are out of state. And so, I mean, would we do public service to the direct owner or to the manager at the actual business? How would that play out, Pete?
So with that, and I guess, Pete, I would ask, when we table this evening, do we need to identify the date on when we will bring that item back? Do we need to be specific? And maybe there's opportunity for that to be worked on during our meeting. And when we get to that agenda item, let's just have the specificity of if we're going to table, what meeting will we be bringing that back?
Your Honor, members of council, you do not need to specify tonight when the next meeting will be.
Perfect.
I'd be happy to work with staff offline on how and where to get people served and what timelines we need in order to make sure that we get everything we need to. I agree with Karen that doing it all before the next meeting might be a challenge.
Understood. So with that note of what is on the agenda this evening, I would look for a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Byström and a second from Councilmember Munson. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Agenda's approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Quick couple of logistics items to note. This is open forum opportunities of the public, or an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council on any topic of your choosing. Please note that we do also have those scheduled public hearings for the tobacco and liquor licenses. So if you are planning to speak on that topic, you're welcome to do so now or at the hearing. We're happy to hear your feedback at any time. With that, we can open up open forum. And Karen, do you have anybody for open forum this evening?
I don't specifically have anyone for open forum. I have several attendees waiting, and so I would need to know, I guess, by raise of hand, if any of the attendees can raise your hand if you wanted to talk right now so that I can see that and I would be able to move you into the meeting to speak at this point in time.
Any attendees wishing to speak at this time? The raise hand
I'm not
function is
seeing.
in the bottom of your Zoom tray. We'll hold for just a moment. All right, not seeing anybody for open forum, we will move on to our consent agenda this evening. Council, our consent agenda is items 6A through 6K. I would entertain any changes or a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the consent agenda 6A through 6K.
I will second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Munson. Karen, can we have a roll call on the consent agenda, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is Resolution 01-25-2101, accepting donations from, for the Forest Lake Police Department. Chief Peterson.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, good evening. What we received a week ago was a couple of donations by two individuals that wish not to be identified. They were anonymous, and they asked that the donations go to the Forest Lake Police Department. And so this resolution is just accepting those two donations. Once again, I honestly don't know who those individuals are, so I just want to publicly thank them just in case they are viewing this City Council meeting.
Very good, thank you. I would move that we pass resolution 01252101, accepting donations with gratitude.
I'll second.
A motion and a second from Councilmember Husnick. Any discussion? Hearing none. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström. Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Our next item this evening, CBRE listing renewal agreement for Headwaters 123. Dan, I believe, Patrick.
Yeah,
He's
Dan,
still
I
at
think he's still in
EDA.
the other EDA. So what you have in front of you tonight is the renewal for the listing of the Headwaters 123 properties. We have Dan Peterson, the listing agent, with us to go over where we've been at and what might be possible in the future and just give us kind of a market recap. We believe we should still continue with CBRE as our listing agent and hopefully soon be successful in some kind of a sale. So somebody can bring Dan into it. I think I see him there, so I'll turn it over to him.
Hey, Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. I'm going to try to be brief this evening, but I have a couple slides here. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to share can I share my screen here?
Yes, please.
And then you can tell me if you see
Yep, we see it.
green screen. Okay. Recapping of what would be an interesting year, I wanted to touch on a couple of things going on in the market today and where we've been at with some of the interest on the site and kind of how we see things for 21. And certainly be open to taking any questions from council or staff or anyone as it would be deemed appropriate by the council in this forum tonight as well. As I think many can understand, the pandemic has negatively affected many aspects of commercial real estate development. However, interestingly enough, data centers and industrial real estate have really been the two bright spots that we would report from this last year. I brought a chart here to kind of show you a little bit of what's happened, and the indicator that I would point out here is that these are REITs, real estate investment trusts, that work in all the major product categories of commercial real estate. And if you look at the far side of the left there, you can see that retail is actually down about 33% over the year. And that's not, I don't think, too surprising to anyone. But with the transition of what's been going on, there's been increases in demand. And on the far right, you can see that data centers have outperformed most other segments of the business. And industrial is not too far behind. I think it can be assumed that a lot of the development that has resulted to these two specific product groups has prospered in large part from the work from home and other lockdown activities. E-commerce and distribution businesses have driven an increase in industrial development, and e-commerce and internet use and basically remote everything has caused an increased demand for hyperscale IT services, thus driving up more demand for data centers. We expect this demand to continue into 21, along with what we saw as a pent-up demand or a delay in some of the enterprise data center activities. So a lot of stuff that was on pause during the pandemic, we expect to come back to the market and in turn push more data center development to be expanded. Certainly in primary data center markets where it's happened thus far, similar to distribution markets, but secondary and tertiary markets, which we call ourselves here, are expected to grow even faster this year, primarily because of last mile activities on that distribution side. And then also the computing needs, if you're familiar with what's happening with edge technologies, or as far as edge computing needing to be pushed closer to the end user. So from those perspectives, we feel strong about data center and also industrial as the two primary categories of interest where we've seen most of our traction and development, certainly nationally and to a degree locally. The next slide I'm showing you here is current industrial construction. And while it's been primarily focused inside the submarkets closer in town, what's happening here is that we expect it to begin to push out as the inventory that's available decreases, or land sites that are available do as well. And certainly as needs evolve, as populations develop, transportation changes. I don't want to go too off onto a tangent, but even as autonomous vehicles become more prevalent in distribution, we're going to see truck travel change drastically, and in turn logistics is going to be affected. So we really see, again, the industrial and also the heavy infrastructure data center use as two primarily benefactors of a lot of what's going to be happening in the result of those two trends. Now, more specifically to our site and our market, getting away from industrial on the data center side, just in the last quarter, we saw one service provider break ground on a new development, as well as another out-of-market data center service provider coming here to put some land under contract. And that was something that we continue to see, I would call it a fairly steady trickle of activity. Again, in light of pandemic activities, a fairly consistent draw of inquiry from outside the market. We have submitted the Headwaters site to 3 other out-of-market service providers and 2 enterprise site selection groups for similar developments in the last quarter. As of today, our site is still under consideration for the 80+ acre greater MSP project, and we expect to hear more on that front in February. Aside from those, in all honesty, the site traffic has been relatively slow with COVID. But in the last 90 days, we've had inquiries from Silicon Valley, Atlanta, Dallas, New Jersey, as well as over 300 broker views on Catalyst and CoStar, which are our primary broker marketing tools. At this point, all interest has been slow in approaching or communicating about any next steps. But in the meantime, we continue our email campaign and with the industry, and also directly contact end users and other representatives when we learn of a project that might be a potential fit. The takeaway here is the data center and industrial are 2 of the commercial real estate categories we're seeing the most development. But that said, we still market this site to a full spectrum of commercial users and potential buyers. When we examine each requirement that we encounter as it generally fits our site characteristics, the 20 to 120+ acres, flexible zoning, infrastructure delivered to site. So we're not really limiting ourselves to just who the most favored nations are at this point. But again, I think there's a good mix of local and national exposure happening to the site right now. And sometimes you're trying to get lucky with some lightning, but at the same token, I think we're putting our goal was when we endeavored on this a year ago, was to make sure that we were getting on the list on a national basis for these projects. And we really are doing that at this point. Now, should the trend continue with the data center market, we really feel that there's going to be more of that development in our area. And in turn, this will mean that we're going to be on the list more often. It doesn't guarantee a deal that gets done or that this is the direction ultimately the city wants to take with the site, but it does leave us open to more options than maybe what was previously available. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from anyone. Did anyone have any questions regarding what we've been doing, who we've been dealing with, or anything that I might be able to answer?
I don't hear any questions coming forth. So,
Hey, I'm
There you
sorry,
are.
my internet dropped and I just rejoined, so I'm here and reconnecting. I'm on my phone though. But were there any questions for Dan this evening?
I don't have a question, maybe just a comment. I can certainly see why this has been a really, really challenging environment, Dan. Do you have any, and maybe I do have a question. Do you have any, are you kind of changing your approach at all in any way, shape or form, you know, to adjust to kind of the current state of the market with COVID? You know, any unique or different strategies, or is there just kind of one pathway to get this work done?
You know, it's a good question. I don't know that there's any one pathway. I think ultimately the more creative we can get, regardless of what kind of economic situation or what trend is more prevalent than another, to make sure that we're getting this in front of audiences. I know that it's a numbers game when it comes to who's out there developing what. And so there's certainly less of a certain group because of what's been going on due to COVID. In some ways, we've been prepped for this on a national level of marketing sites. Doing things virtually has been the game plan all along. So a digital presentation of the site, you know, and the tools that we've developed kind of prepared us for this day in a certain way. Because a lot of groups also like to anonymously view a property from a 10,000 foot level. And you want to put all the kind of tools in front of them so that they can make up their own mind and approach when they are. And my point earlier about is the groups have thus far not really stuck their neck out and made themselves too known to us. We use these tools to know who is looking at it or who represents them. Sometimes it's maybe going after a different type of representative for those kinds of developments. So we might change that up a bit. It might be less construction firms. It might be more tax incentive folks, or, you know, those kinds of things. I know that was a little rambling, but did that answer your question?
Yeah, that very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions for Dan this evening? Dan, my question was very similar to Councilmember Bystrom's, and I think you've answered it already, and just in that, is there anything different that we should be doing, you know, related to COVID and current market conditions? And you've kind of answered that already. So thank you. It's helpful to hear the update, and it's great to see that we're well positioned. And thank you for joining us live here tonight. I apologize for the technology issues on my side.
Well, you wouldn't be alone if you wouldn't have a Zoom call with a few technology issues. It's been quite a year of those. So
Right. That is exactly
having
right.
me. Thank you for having me and allowing CBRE to work with you as well. We're very proud to do so.
Terrific.
Laura,
Council,
we're looking for
go
a
ahead.
motion on this.
Yes, we are looking for an approval of the listing renewal amendment agreement.
I'd make a motion that we renew the listing renewal amendment agreement with for the Headwaters 123 with CBRE.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Munson. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Sorry about that. Councilmember.
Looks is voting aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Bystrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Valento.
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Thank you again, Dan. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Councilor-
Good evening.
Council, our
Dan.
next agenda, this item this evening is resolution 01252102, Forest Hills Farms, second edition preliminary PUD and plat. Donovan, I believe you're walking us through this. And council, my internet just came up. I'm just going to transition back to my computer, so I will be right back. Jen, go ahead, or Donovan, go ahead.
Donovan, who else do I have? I put Jaren in the meeting, and who else needs to come in for this
Yeah, John Bender, please.
John, okay.
Mayor, members of council, I'd like to present the preliminary plat and preliminary PUD application for Forest Hills Farm 2. This is an application that is on some land that might be familiar to you from years ago when the first edition was developed. It's located here at the intersection of North Shore Trail and Highway 97. As you can see, there's already rough grading, even a rough outline of a road for that, of course, indicating its previous history. This being Forest Hills Farm first edition here. This land was originally platted in 2007 for preliminary plat, but never went to final plat. And now local builder Jaren Johnson with his project engineer John Bender, who are joining us on this call, are proposing a 35 lot minor subdivision that shares that same road network you saw in the first screen there. So access is from North Shore Trail, and there's a main east-west road with a loop. This outlot is one of two, Outlot A, and there's Outlot B adjacent to North Shore Trail. These would be dedicated to the HOA and maintained by the HOA if the project is built. And there is a cul-de-sac road leading north here. This being a PUD application, the developer has proposed lots that are smaller than the 25,000 square foot minimum size for the single family zoning district. There are a number of lots that don't have that minimum width and area, but no lots are smaller than 15,000 square feet, about a third of an acre, or no less than 80 feet in width. The basic net density on this, that is areas that aren't wetland or steep slopes, which there are over 3.5 acres of those kind of land, which makes the putting the sites in here a little challenging at first. The basic net density is pretty consistent. It's about 1.4 dwelling units per net acre for the land, which almost meets the comprehensive plan minimum density. This project did have review with the Planning Commission, and there was a recommendation of City Council approval for this preliminary PUD, preliminary plat. The conversation focused on on the difference in some of the lot sizes from the original preliminary plat, which had 28. This is back in 2007. After that was not final platted, this became a simple outlot. And there was at the neighborhood meeting and the Planning Commission, there was some concerns expressed about the narrowness of the lots, the safety of the other wells within the area. This property is served by public sewer and private well, as is the Forest Hills Farm 1. And the project engineer, assured the questioner that because it is on city sewer, the big concerns about wells or the aquifer being contaminated are really minimized. As a PUD application, the city says basically what sort of public benefit will you provide for that kind of flexibility with the zoning size? and what staff is recommending, and also what the Planning Commission recommended for approval is a 10-foot trail that'll go along this main road. Let me get this a little larger here. The main east-west road, as well as a pedestrian route going north, which is, building a sidewalk, of course, is standard for one side of the road with our engineering standards. However, this is a more robust pedestrian trail, 10-foot wide, bituminous. Then also grading and wood chipping the existing public trail that's within the public park that was dedicated with the original Forest Hills Farm approval. It's about 19 acres, and this is an area that is truly beautiful. I mean, it's steep slopes. You have a lake here, coniferous forest, and this trail winds through all the way down to, show you again a little larger screen, to the outlot for the first edition, there is a public trail, public easement coming out right about here and matching up with this Caroline Court cul-de-sac. And of course, there's a sidewalk we see going through Forest Hills Farm first edition. And with that, we have approximately a mile long loop through both along the city streets and through that wood chip trail that is existing but needs some maintenance. And maintenance also was part of the neighborhood meeting conversation. And basically, the city, if this Forest Hills Farm second edition is constructed, well, even if it's not, the city does have some maintenance to do as far as maintaining the park and also policing the ATV traffic through there, which was a concern of the neighboring residents. And this is a preliminary PUD. So this is something that will, if approved by council, will come back with for the final PUD, final plat application. And there are a number of concerns that the city engineer expressed in his comment letter that, of course, will have to be addressed. And there was further talk about that, meeting those concerns in a call with the project team last week. I don't have concerns regarding those. And much of as I mentioned, much of the site has been graded out, and it's essentially building within the defined footprint with some modifications to make sure that current engineering standards are adhered to. There's no signage proposed this time, and the woodland preservation plan will be submitted with the final plat and PUD application. So at this point, the staff recommendation is to approve resolution 125-2102 to approve both the preliminary PUD, preliminary plat, subject to staff conditions. And with that, I'm happy to take questions from council.
Thank you, Donovan. Council, let's take a round of questions if you have questions for Donovan, and then we'll invite both Jaren and John to have make any comments they might want to make of council. So any initial questions before we hear from the development team?
I'm not sure if this is a development team question or a Donovan question, but I think I may have missed it here along the way, Donovan. What types of homes are going in here? I know Mr. Johnson is pretty well known for his beautiful single level slab on grade homes, and they tend to be in a little smaller, lot size, and just kind of curious, are these single family homes? Are they?
Yeah, they're certainly single family, and I'd probably leave it to Mr. Johnson to, give a better description of what the homes he imagines for this area.
Okay.
Well, hello.
Go ahead, Jan. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can. Glad you're here.
Nice to meet you all. So yeah, you're right. I accidentally got in the niche of our single family homes around here from 6, 7, 8 years ago. We took over a couple of Bruggeman home projects in the area, and it really got us going in the association maintained idea. And my background with my father is actually from day one we started the company, 22 years ago with him, is a true custom builder. I mean, we were doing, independent custom homes and big homes, and we know how to do that. The one thing intriguing about this development, Excelsior Group was coming to me for years and saying, we're going to develop this, you'd be a good fit. And I see it as what I'm proposing to do here is a single family association maintained neighborhood where they're going to be uniquely different. Most lots are going to be homes with basements. And that's what we did before we started doing all the single family homes that a lot of you are aware of. So we're definitely geared as a builder who can build and design a nice home with basements. And I'm looking at this as, I don't want to force a 55 plus idea like I did. I don't want to say forced up there, but Wyoming said, hey, you should do a 55 plus community. I am looking at this as a nice community where we're going to be marketing to maybe empty nesters, people with families is fine. The price point's going to be above $500,000. It has to be with a lot of prices, developing costs. And most of them will have basements, so they're going to be 3,000, some probably 4,000 plus square foot homes with finished basements. So it's going to be a nice community. I know that Al, I look up to him what he started, and I know in the beginning, he built some big homes in the first phase, and I don't want to force that in here. I don't want to have to put up $1.5 million 2 stories in here because there just isn't a market for that in Forest Lake right now. But there is a market for what I'm looking at doing, and I have a lot of people that I've been testing the waters of this for years. I knew this was an opportunity years ago. I never thought I'd be the developer of it. I kind of had to make that decision because Ben Schmidt said, hey, we're selling this. We're not going to develop it. And I've been excited to be a builder in there, and now we're in this spot. So we can bring what the community is asking for, and without going way expensive. But I'm not a national builder. We're not gonna put cookie cutters in there either. So hopefully that's okay with all you.
Other questions for either staff or the development team at this point? We can just open it up. I would, so Donovan, you made comment, and I'm a little confused on what was there was a minimum around, it wasn't lot size, that wasn't met. What is it that is not, I just want to be clear on what is out of standard.
Okay, there is a range of minimum residential density for this low density future land use, and it's 1.5 to 3 dwelling units per acre. What they have is 1.42 dwelling units per acre, and this is, I mean, it's kind of, that is what the ideal is that gets within that range. There are many places it can be. There are many places within, like Chestnut Creek, for instance. There's wetlands where you couldn't reach that minimum density, as well as here it's a steep slopes and wetlands that prevent that.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess I'd ask the development team. You got to ask the very specific question to start off with. Were there any broad comments you wanted to make or things you wanted council to consider at this time?
Hey, John, anything that you want to present or ideas?
No, I don't think anything specific to add beyond what Donovan's already said. We're pleased to present this, and I'm thankful to the council and to Mayor for hearing out our proposal. I think I've walked the site with Jaron, and I understand why there's pride for this land from both the neighbors and Jaron himself. it is a very beautiful piece of property, and I think we'll have a beautiful addition once we're complete with our project.
Excellent, thank you. I do have a question, Donovan, I think this is more for you, related to the trail maintenance. So I understand there's two pieces. One is the paved 10-foot path, and then the second piece is the updating the wood chips on the public land. But that's existing parkland from the previous development, right? So that's not new parkland, that is existing. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Something that's unique about this property is that the parkland dedication requirement was satisfied with that initial 19+ acre dedication, back with the original development. I think it was something around 73 acres total. And so they dedicated this, 19+ acres to satisfy what they thought was going to be, two phases of the project. It just took them a bit longer than they expected and a different owner.
Right. So we have existing maintenance responsibility for that existing trail, is that right? And this contribution from the phase 2 project team is essentially relieving us of that requirement. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it's actually, no, it's city land. So it's city maintenance. What I found in my site visit is that the trails hasn't been maintained. It's rutted from ATV vehicle travel, and it does need some grading and then wood chips put on it. And that would be a public amenity that the city would receive, and then we wouldn't maintain. I mean, the city should have been maintaining all along, but there's just not really been a constituency requesting that. And I know Public Works goes in there on occasion. I know that because they've taken deer stands out of there, temporary deer stands out of there before. But it's, no, it would still be, city maintained, but it would, I think, get a lot more use as a loop and just with more residents in the neighborhood. And it's something that, I mean, I've had other comments that weren't part of the public meetings, people asking about it. And I said, there's going to be this, potentially this walking path that'll serve. And, people say this is could be a real benefit to have a really safe and beautiful place to walk in the area where they're, otherwise you're walking along, North Shore Trail, which is really not the best pedestrian environment.
I guess my concern is that and so I'm glad there's an opportunity for us to get this trail, regraded and wood chipped, if that's a verb. But I as we think about ongoing maintenance of public land in the city, this one for me personally has been a little off radar. And if someone would have complained about, the status of this this trail that is our responsibility 2 years ago, I would have been a little flat-footed, and just, again, it's a little off radar for me. And so as we think about, full 10-year plan and what does it mean to maintain all city parcels and all amenities on all city parcels, this does need to be on the list. That said, I'm happy that we've got an opportunity now to get it, with this amenity into a more usable state, but just ongoing awareness, I guess, of council of our existing obligations out there. And then I also sense that there was feedback from the neighborhood meeting around ATV use, which I'm assuming is not allowed. And so I guess, is that a correct statement? ATV use is not allowed on that trail?
Yeah, off-road vehicles aren't allowed on city land, public lands, unless they're designated for that.
Okay.
And I think, there's just been, there's been no occupation of the land, and it's just been in this kind of a hidden area. I mean, it's not, in some ways it's not increasing this, creating a new responsibility for maintenance. It's always been there. It's just more of a reminder that it's there.
Mayor Bain, can I make a comment?
Please.
So I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and I know there was some question about the trail. And Donovan, if I'm correct, you had said it will also be marked as public trail so that folks know that they can access that and use that. Because I will say, living, it's where I live out here, there isn't a safe place to walk. So I definitely see that as a benefit. But am I making that up, or did you say there?
Yeah, no, I think that was something that I thought of but didn't note within this preliminary review in the comment letter, but certainly require that. And that was also it's a concern also for to make sure people understand that where there's simply access easement on these two the ends portions that are in that first edition of Forest Hills Farms, they're directing them to, to stay where is a public trail and not to wander to where it is private. And that was a concern with the residents that the lakeshore lot that they own, that they commonly share, which is private property, isn't trespassed upon. And so I think signage there will make it clear so that we can make sure people know where they can go and where they can't.
Is signage contemplated as part of this project?
I think I think we'll make that requirement with the final PUD final plat.
Because I do think that's also important, is just for both the public using, but then also for peace of mind for those adjacent property owners, that people know where they can be and they can't. Other questions for either staff or the development team on overall project? Otherwise, council, this is resolution 01-25-2102, and I believe it's on page 130 in your packet.
Mayor Bain, I move adoption of the findings of fact in resolution 01-25-21-02, a resolution approving a preliminary plat and preliminary PUD for Forest Hills Farm second edition planned unit development with the conditions as outlined by city staff.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Byström and a second from Councilmember Husnick. Any further discussion on this item?
I have one comment if I could.
Please, absolutely.
I know there's been some discussion about the name, and Kelly, I think you were in that conversation, heard about that. I also spoke with Al, and I have made the decision that I do think it would be beneficial. I heard enough. The only negative I've heard about this is that the first edition didn't want to have the name of that first edition. So I am working with my team on renaming this second plat, and I'm okay with that idea. So I just want you all to know that a new name will be forthcoming, and however we work that out legally with what the plat is called, but for marketing reasons and neighborhood reason, I have made the decision to call it a different name. And I think a lot of people will appreciate hearing that from what I heard in our first meeting. So,
just process wise and for my own information, is that something that gets done as part of the final PUD that comes forward next steps? Donovan, or is that technically where that fits?
This is something of a new one for me. Okay. I think it's appropriate that the plat say Forest Hills Farms 2 second edition, since it was originally made an outlot of Forest Hills Farm. But I'm not sure if it's the name is simply a marketing, or whether the plat needs to think. But that we'll I think confer with Pete and Amanda to get that cleared up.
I was just going to say maybe an opportunity to in this next round of discussions to make sure everyone's on the same page of technically what does that take to get that name changed everywhere where it needs to be.
I agree.
Very good. We have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion at this point? Hearing none. Karen, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick?
Aye.
Councilmember Munson?
Aye.
Councilmember Byström?
Aye.
Councilmember Valento?
Aye.
Mayor Bain?
Aye. And motion approved. Good luck with your project. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to move on to liquor and tobacco compliance failures. We are going to have seven separate public hearings to hear feedback on this topic. Before we start going down the list of public hearings, and I'll list the order here. So if you are a member, actually, when we open up public hearing, Karen, maybe it's appropriate to let everybody technically into the Zoom meeting, and then we will just coordinate and allow people to step forward individually. That just takes the technical element out of it here, or the technology element out of it here. And we will hear first some opening comments from Karen, just overall on, Karen, if you could just summarize your memo to council.
Sure.
And then we will open up public hearings in this order. We'll hear the American Legion liquor license first, Famous Dave's Barbecue second, Pizza Hut second, Liquor Works liquor license, Pizza Hut third, Liquor Works liquor license fourth, Liquor Works off sale tobacco fifth, Holiday Station Store number 311 sixth, and then Highway 61 Stop and Go 7. Does that sound okay? That'll be the order of our public hearings. Karen, do you just want to kick us off with some overall conversation?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Bain. So at the last meeting, these were separated out and just highlighted to bring council's attention to the fact that these haven't dropped off. We did have some compliance failure checks. At the last meeting, what we needed to do was approve their licenses for 2021. So that piece was taken care of. So everybody's operating. For this part of this, we're looking at their compliance failures, and that was back in January 13th of 2020. So we're looking at a little bit over a year ago. And at that point in time, the liquor licenses that you're seeing here, the businesses that you're seeing here with liquor licenses had previous violations, 2 previous violations within a 24-month period. And the tobacco licenses, the businesses with the tobacco licenses had 1 violation within a 24-month period. When a liquor license holder has 2 violations within a 24-month period, what our ordinance says is that there is a $1,000 fine and a 1-day suspension on their liquor license. Back when we were taking a look at this, these were placed on hold. The tobacco license for tobacco, and we had just changed the ordinance at that time, so it was new. But I believe for a tobacco license, a one-time violation in that 24-month period, I believe was a $550 fine and a 1-day suspension on their license. And so when we were taking a look at this back last year, of course, we were struck by the pandemic. And so we put this on hold. This is now coming forward for council review to make a decision on what we want to do about these compliance failures. Should note that in 2020, during the pandemic, some of these businesses were shut down for 84 days. So they did receive a refund on a portion of their 2020 license. And some of these businesses were able to maintain business during that time. So they weren't impacted necessarily by being completely shut down. And so what place I'm at now is for recommendations. I'm basically deferring to council to use their discretion on what they want to do for these compliance check failures. I'm just taking a look at my notes here. What it says for tobacco license, the change on that, we did make stiffer penalties when we redid that tobacco ordinance. So there's an additional enforcement level on the tobacco administrative penalty. I'm reading what it says. A minimum penalty. It was a $750 fine and a 10-day license suspension as per our code, and then failure to pay that administrative penalty fine within 30 days would result in an additional 10-day license suspension. So I'm open to answer questions. There's a lot of moving parts here. So if council has any questions, I can certainly answer them. I do have several people who want to speak during their public hearings. I also have an email from somebody who couldn't be here. She wanted me to read her email. And that was Liquor Works. So she had both the tobacco and the liquor license compliance failures. So any questions from council?
Thank you, Karen. And as we're thinking about sequencing next steps for the next meeting, I would recommend that we take each one individually, review the fact pattern for each one, open up the public hearing, bring it back to council for a decision, and then move on to the next. And so that there will be an opportunity in this next meeting to do a full review of facts of what was the violation, what was the number of violations, discussion of penalty, public hearing, and then a council conclusion, and then we'll move on to the next one. Tonight's a little bit different because we're not expecting to take action tonight. That's the more broad opening discussion, but I would say that there's certainly opportunities. If there's questions around facts around each of these individually, we can certainly either take some of those questions tonight, and also there's an opportunity next meeting as well as we sequence each one, go through one step by step. And Karen, go ahead.
And I would point council as well to the information in your packet. I did supply the alcohol compliance check forms for both, for the liquor failures, there was 2 for each of those, and then the tobacco, there was 1 on each of those businesses. So those are included in here. There's not tons of detail, but you can take a look and see, for example, what was sold, description of the person that sold it, sold either cigarettes or alcohol. So that provides a little bit of detailed information and the number of violations, date, time.
Very good. Council, any specific questions at this time before we start opening up the public hearings? And we'll have opportunity after the public hearings as well if there's any additional questions. All right, with that, Karen, do you want to let all participants into the meeting and then we'll walk through and I'll review, once they're in, I'll review the list as well.
Yep, I'm just moving everybody in here. Okay. That should be everybody moved into the meeting.
Very good.
And then we'll have the email from, we'll wait till we get to Liquor Works, but I do have an email to read for that.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. We are on the alcohol and tobacco compliance check discussion item on our agenda. Just a quick item, couple of notes of logistics for this evening. Council is not expected to take action this evening. We are expecting to bring this back at a future meeting, but because it was noticed as a public hearing and we know some of you had planned to be here, we do want to provide an opportunity for you to speak. If you would like to come back when we do readdress this topic, you are welcome to also participate. There will be another round of public hearings for that. And if you are representing a license holder, you will be notified by staff of when that meeting is. But again, wanted to be respectful of your time and certainly wanted to hear what's on your mind tonight. We are going to hold individual public hearings for each of the licenses. There will be 7 tonight, and I'll just list them in order. When we get to the public hearing, if it is the one that you would like to speak on, please either just raise your hand if you're on video or use the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom tray. We'll acknowledge you. Welcome to hear your comments. We'll hear all comments on that particular item. We'll close that public hearing for that business and then we'll move on to the next one. So our order this evening is going to be in the following: the American Legion Post 225 liquor license, Famous Dave's Barbecue Shack liquor license, Pizza Hut liquor license, Liquor Works liquor license, Liquor Works tobacco license, Holiday Station store number 311, and then Highway 61 Stop and Go tobacco license. I'm sorry, the Holiday Station store was a tobacco license as well. So that is the order. Any questions on logistics before we get started? All right, Pete, we doing okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excellent. All right, with that, I will open up the public hearing for the American Legion Post 225 liquor license. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this topic? Please either raise your hand. Vicki, glad you're here. Welcome. And you, there you go.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Council. So yeah, it's been a year. It's been a long year. So I just wanted to reiterate what had happened and what the American Legion did in finding out that the liquor license there was a violation. I think it happened on January 14th with an employee. He did not pass the person did not pass a liquor sting. We had immediately suspended the person for 30 days to determine what we would be doing with the employee. And he was suspended till February 13th. He was the one that had 2 liquor violations. At that time, we immediately made sure all employees and servers were certified in the MLBA server training. After the e-board meeting, we did not have suitable employment for the employee, so he did not return to employment. Then we, of course, during COVID, we had shut down in June, and we had hired some new servers, and immediately the first thing that they had to do before even serving or anything, part of the training, was they had to get certified through the MLBA server training. And then again in December, just recently, we went through everything because we strive to comply with all state, county, and city rules. We try to instill that in all our employees too we hire. So as they are a direct reflection of the American Legion, Post 225. So in December, we did some more training, and we also had some e-board members certify in it and some other members so that they're aware what these employees have to do. So I just wanted to let you know what we have done since January when that happened. And I have Paul Siebert, my first vice, is on here.
Excellent. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for being here. Paul, anything that you wanted to address with council at this time?
No, I think Vicki stated it pretty well. That's pretty much the actions we've taken.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
there
you.
anybody else in attendance this evening that would like to speak on the American Legion Post 225 item? Not seeing any or hearing any, we will close the public hearing on that item. And we will open the public hearing for Famous Dave's Barbecue Shack, the liquor license. Is there anybody that would like to speak on Famous Dave's? We'll pause just for a minute and see if anybody comes forward. Not seeing anybody. We will close the public hearing for Famous Dave's Barbecue Shack. We will open the public hearing for Pizza Hut liquor license. Is there anybody that would like to speak on Pizza Hut? Alan, glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go over everything that happened. It was quite a while ago. We've taken steps, extra precaution now. What we're doing is we have basically daily meetings, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, just kind of to discuss, going over with all the employees, the policies, how to card, the ID carding. We've added extra charts on there, so you can check the ID and see that it says under 21 and look at that kind to see that they're under 21 or over 21. Also checking the back of the ID to see if there's any restrictions on the ID to make sure. I know some people have restrictions that they don't have alcohol that's available or that they're not allowed to drink. So we make sure they check that and make sure they're following all the policies. Also, we've told all the employees that if they're not sure, just not to serve. We'd rather just not serve the alcohol than if we're not sure that if they should or shouldn't have it. So we're taking every precaution possible. Unfortunately, the girl that sold it said she went to high school with this person, and which was not an excuse. You know, she has been trained properly, and that she's no longer with us anymore. But it was one of those things she went up and did. I said, it doesn't matter if you know the person or you don't know the person. You need to take action and check the ID. I mean, that's just the rules, and everything needs to be followed. We do also have training on our learning zone, our Serve Safe, where everybody, all employees, they have to watch it's an alcohol training site, which is nice with Pizza Hut. They have training session just for alcohol now, whether, you know, if you think somebody's had too much alcohol, not to serve them, if you know, and then how to check an ID, how to follow through. And it's really nice training that they have for that. But then we also make sure that every employee, whether or not they do or don't serve alcohol, they know the rules. We've got, each day we talk to them. Like if I go in there and I talk to whoever's working, I'll say, okay, have you checked, or, you know, have you seen this chart? You know, how does it work? I just have them explain it to me. So I have multiple stores that I do work with and train on this kind of issue. So I make sure that they're following the standards that need to be followed. And then also we have a new manager there. She's been within the alcohol and food industry for about 15 years. So she's been aware, and she's taken classes and kind of doing what's needed. And she's a really good trainer on that aspect. So, and then another step that they had taken was to actually check 2 ID, like if, you know, one person checks the ID and then another person checks it. So we're actually doing double checks just to make sure, you know, we want to take an extra step above and beyond to make sure this doesn't happen again. So we just kind of make sure that, but, you know, and then we've got other, you know, policies, just making sure, you know, everybody's aware of it. And if we hire somebody new, that's where we do all the different training, and, you know, just keeping on top of it and making sure this doesn't happen again for everyone. That way people can still take advantage of having a beer and a pizza. So, yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on Pizza Hut this evening? Not seeing anyone else, we will close the public hearing for Pizza Hut, and we will open the public hearing for Liquor Works. Let's talk about the liquor license first. We'll open up the public hearing for the Liquor Works liquor license. Karen, go ahead. I think you're on mute. Karen, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. This is the one I'm going to read the email on, and I'm not entirely sure. I haven't read the full email, if it's in relation to their liquor license, their tobacco license, or both. So this is from Beth Whitaker at Liquor Works, and she says, "Good evening, Karen. I was planning on joining in on the meeting tonight, but I now have to work at the store. I was hoping to let the council members know that the night of the compliance check, I had a new employee working for me. He had only been there for an hour on his first night. The employee that was training him went to use the bathroom right before the purchase took place. I know that if the employee would have been out there at the register, the new employee would have passed the check. I'm not sure if this will make a difference, but I was hoping to let the council know this information."
Thank you, Karen.
Yep.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak for Liquor Works, the Liquor Works liquor license this evening? Not seeing any, we will close that public hearing, and we will open the public hearing for Liquor Works tobacco license. And Karen, you did not have a second submission for that, right? It was just the one. Okay.
Correct.
Anybody for the Liquor Works tobacco license? Not seeing anything come forward, we will close that public hearing, and we will open the public hearing for Holiday Station Store 311 tobacco license. Is there anybody that would like to speak on that topic? And give it just a moment. Holiday Station Store 311 tobacco license. Not seeing anybody, we will close the public hearing for Holiday Station Store 311, and we will open the public hearing for Highway 61 Stop and Go tobacco license. Anybody to speak on that topic? Is there anybody to speak on the Highway 61 Stop and Go? And Mr.
think-
Sharma, I think you might be on mute. Are you able to take yourself off mute?
Here, let me see if I can.
You're still on mute.
Still on mute. Let me see if I can remove
The
mute.
bottom left of your Zoom tray, you should be able to take yourself off mute.
Oh, yes, yes, I
There you
found
go.
it.
We can hear you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Council. And I was just watching, this is the first time I'm on a public hearing, and this is a very good experience, as well listening to you guys as a council member, and as well as the defendant who were there. There are a few of them, and I'm one of them. And in my case, I admitted myself in the county judge, and I'm already fined for that. I paid the fine, and I'm like, if you check my record, that I'm there for the last 5 years, and most of the time this is a family-run store, so I don't have any employees. So whatever is done is done by either by the management or by the owner. So I was there, and that is my simply that was my distraction. Actually, I was on the phone, and the young man was there, and I just did it, and I just apologized to the officer who was accompanying him, and this and that. But as if you consider that for the last 5 years, I'm given so many recommendations, so many certificates, like I did a good job regarding the compliance. So in that case, I really apologize that I was not at that moment part of the community to apply the compliance, but I'm making sure in future it will be taken care of. And if you see my practice, I don't want to elaborate much, but I don't do this thing like I'm from New York, and I'm very much aware of all this thing. And as my record in New York, being in New York with such a big city, I never had a ticket or something like that. And I'm doing this for the last 25 years, this stores thing. But that is my totally negligence or my distraction that day. I really apologize for that. But I will be really considering, like as you see that this is the COVID time, and the businesses are very slow and this and that. And if you want to go to the higher punishment or something like that, if you want to revoke my license, if you want to suspend my license, this and that, if you do it now, I will be more happy. If you want to take it to the next date, and then maybe the things are getting a little better for the business. You understand what I mean? So that will be okay. But if given an apology and given a chance not to do it the next time or something, I ensure myself. As you see, me and my wife, we are the only two people who work there, and we follow all the rules and regulations, and we normally don't encourage, especially me, and especially my wife. She is very careful, but like I said, I was on the phone, and all of a sudden the guy came, and I just put the pack on the counter. The sale was not complete even. I just put the pack on the counter, but it was considered. So I really apologize for that. But this was my little saying. I want to have the experience of the public hearing, how is like in modern days is done. I really appreciate for your listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to Highway 61 Stop and Go? Not seeing any, we will close that public hearing, and that is the end of our public hearing period. Just a quick note for those that attended the public hearing. Again, a reminder to my opening comments as we started to talk about this, council is not going to be taking action this evening. You will be invited to a follow-up public hearing when that is on our next agenda. You are welcome to attend that public hearing. Also, though, note, we know your time is valuable, and so your comments that are made here are in the public record and will be available for council to consider at the next meeting as well. So you are welcome to be there, but again, please note that we have accepted your comments And those are on the record and noted. With
Thank-
that, we will bring the conversation back to council. And council, opportunity for questions, feedback. And again, my recommendation would be that we would table, but I'm open to your feedback and questions until we get to that point. Pete, go ahead.
Your Honor, members of council, because there will be a second public hearing after some further notice, I would recommend that council avoid discussing what they might be wanting to do here until after that second hearing. But if you have questions about, the facts that you were presented or something like that, that makes sense. But I would be cautious about beginning the conversation you would expect to have at the end of the hearings until the end of the second hearing.
That is good counsel. Thank you, Pete. With that, counsel, Sam, go ahead.
Or based on Pete's statement, I would make a motion that we table this till the next available meeting for the second public hearing.
There is a motion to table. Is there a second to table?
I'll second to table.
There is a motion and a second. There is no discussion on a table item. And so Karen, we will take a vote to table.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And item is tabled. Our next item on the agenda this evening is the 2021 legal services contract. Patrick, are you walking us through this? Kicking us off?
Yes, I am. In front of the council tonight is a legal services contract, basically a renewal with our current firm. You see there's really no major changes except a small increase in the price of the hourly rate. I recommend that the council approves it. It's a 5-year period, I believe it was, and I recommend approval. We've been very satisfied with our legal representation. They work very close with staff, and we think they do a good job. So recommend for approval.
Thank you, Patrick. Pete, anything further you would add for council's consideration at this time?
Your Honor, council members, at this point, I'm taking off my hat as your lawyer and only speaking to you as a vendor, which is kind of an awkward thing to say. And I would just say it's been a real privilege to serve the council and to work with staff. And we would hope for the opportunity to continue to do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about our contract.
Very good. Thank you, Pete. Council, any questions for staff or Pete on this topic? Sam, go ahead.
Who are these people? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I make a motion that we renew the legal service contract with Levander, Gillen and Miller, PA. It's recommended by Patrick Casey.
There's a motion. Is there a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Byström? Any further discussion? I will just note, appreciate the service we received both from Pete and Amanda, but then also the depth of bench you bring to the table as needed. So much appreciated. I will gladly support the action this evening.
And I really appreciate the hard work too. Thank you.
Yeah. With that, Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Our next item this evening is 2021-2022 sanitary sewer lining project. Ryan, I believe you're taking us through this.
Mayor, City Council, in your packet is the request to authorize preparation of plans and specification for the 2021-22 sanitary sewer lining project. Work is identified in the capital improvement plan. Reason why we have the heading 2021-22 is because a Wednesday we'll jump on an informational meeting with the Met Council with the next up and coming inflow infiltration grant, where we last did these lining projects in 2014 and mirrored that with the grants that came at the same time with that. So basically how that worked back in 2014 is, the more lineal foot we did, you got a certain percent of credits back after if you followed all the rules and requirements that they required in the bid process, and we follow those rules already. So it's kind of a no-brainer not to apply for this grant again, and it just so happens to line up with how we identified it in the CIP. We'll also add into anything we can with the lift station projects. We already have some specific questions into that informational meeting that will be authorized in plans and specs later this spring for that project, and some sewer replacement with some of the street work coming up in that time frame too. So another reason with the flexible schedule in 21-22 is we'll allow contractors when it fits their schedule. This is a very competitive market. More flexibility we allow in a contract like this, where they typically like to do it in wintertime, other than when it's 0 degrees. They can do this. It's all trenchless technology. So the only thing that we have is a few things at each manhole in the road while they're doing the work. So also in the packets is a tentative schedule that's we would follow with the bid of this project. Not really much fancy stuff to this work. In 14, when we did this area, we also saw a very significant reduction in the sewer lift station flow meters. Public Works could comment on that if they have anything else to say, but tonight we're here just for the request to authorize preparation of plans and specification for the 2021-22 sanitary sewer lining project as identified in the capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Ryan. Council, what questions do we have of Ryan? Not hearing any. We'll entertain a motion. And Ryan's recommendation letter is on page 165 of our packet. And Sam, go ahead.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we authorize the preparation plans and specifications for the sewer project as mentioned by Ryan.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Munson. Any discussion on this topic? Seeing none, Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye, and motion approved. Our next item on the agenda this evening is the gravel road assessment policy. And Patrick, are you walking us through this?
Yeah, if you all recall at the workshop on last Tuesday, we represented the gravel road paving policy, outlining the change and the creation of a commercial business district that would call for a 20% match by the local property owners and 80% contribution by the city to pave gravel roads within this district. We had a very short discussion, and there was a request for a map to be provided about gravel roads. We forwarded that to the council the next day, I believe, and we're trying to get this either approved or not approved tonight so we can continue and move on with the 2021 street paving project. If we approve this particular one, we will include that in the bid. If we do not include this and we don't settle this, we will just add the three additional streets that we've planned for instead. So we're asking for discussion and approval or direction on which way we're going to go with this.
Thank you, Patrick. Council, I'll open it up for questions, discussion, topics. Councilmember Byström, go ahead.
Yep. I don't, contrary to what some people think, I believe, I am not opposed to this at all. I'm concerned about where it's landing within this policy. My concern lies in, is this reduction to 20% going to be consistent from this point forward? And if it is, shouldn't we be considering a similar reduction in the construction of new commercial industrial bituminous surface streets as well?
Well, let me try to answer that, and Ryan can chime in when he thinks I'm going off course here. But as far as the new policy goes, the 20%, if we were to pass this policy, would apply to any of the remaining gravel roads outlined in the district. As far as other roads, commercial roads, if you're talking about brand new roads and new development, it has always been the city's policy that the developer pays for 100% of those costs. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, or you're talking about, since we only have a couple gravel roads in this area, that's the only place this will apply. Are the other commercial areas you're talking about beyond brand new ones that I just kind of need a clarification there?
And I think that is my concern. I mean, if we were to need to reference this policy again in a different set of circumstances, we now have it written in policy that we're at 20%. So wouldn't it make more sense to amend this policy around, with a different title, bituminous surfacing of existing commercial, industrial, and business district gravel roads, for example? I mean, I'm just, I'm not 100% sure on that language. I feel like this changing the percentage here is a little bit of a slippery slope. When I mentioned the slippery slope last meeting, that's what I meant. It feels like that's not the place to be doing this. I have long-term concerns about that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we are only changing the policy for a newly created commercial business district, which we have not had in the past, which is outlined in the information sent that I basically believe has 2 gravel roads, and one of those being Fifth Avenue.
Councilmember Byström, is your question around the difference between the commercial district versus all the downtown commercial district versus all commercial areas? Is that part of your, is that your concern, the difference?
My concern is the 20% written into policy when there is a possibility we would need to assess at a rate of 100% at another point in time down the road. And when you say assess at another point in time down the road, are you referring to within that commercial district, or are you talking about a significant redevelopment effort downtown? Is that what you're referring to? Potentially. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that would look like. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just trying to think ahead about a policy change that could get us into trouble at some point down the road. And I'm equally concerned about the inconsistency between the commercial business district and the commercial industrial. The 100% is still in the commercial industrial, and the 20% in the, I'm not arguing that we should get this done. We should get this done. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm just concerned about modifying this policy in this way.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question?
Please.
Sure. So I too think it's crazy that we have gravel roads where they are in the commercial district. Is there a way to so I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Byström say is, Councilmember Byström, is it's too much of a blanket policy, and we need to, is there a way to name specifically where we want to do this, or is that getting too much in the?
I think that's what we are attempting to do here. Prior to this suggested change, the construction of, and correct me, Ryan, if I'm wrong, the construction of any brand new road, whether it was gravel or whether it was dirt or whatever the case may be, was assessed at 100%. Whether it was downtown, whether it was out in the sticks, whether it was anywhere. So what this does, it outlines the area of our commercial district, our current commercial district, indicated by the map that we provided, or the outline that we provided, and limits the 20% cost of improvements, 80% share by the city to that area only. If we were to, say, have a downtown reconstruction or other reconstruction, the policy also, I believe, states that the reconstruction of a commercial zones, I think, shall be assessed at 20%. I think that's what the policy says.
And that's in policy today, correct? That a reconstruction, so if we had let's just throw an example on the table for discussion purposes, if we had a significant redevelopment effort downtown that required the reconstruction, today's policy would say that that's an 80-20 split, right?
Yeah, and I'm looking at it, and it says the reconstructions of streets in the commercial and industrial zoning districts as identified by the comprehensive plan will be assigned assessed at the rate of 20% of the cost improvements to the benefiting properties of the frontage and so forth. So yeah.
So your most recent example of that was 15th Street Southwest, where it was an existing bituminous roadway. City came in, reconstructed it to what it is out there today. And it was assessed for a front footage basis with the commercial property. So we went through the full 429 process. Previously, it was up for reconstruction in 2009. That's when, from whole long story, probably don't want to get into tonight, but whether they evolved to the assessment policy that they currently have today. Therefore, then the property owners along 15th were much more favorable in moving forward on the project because previously they were going to be assessed 70%.
So what were to happen if somewhere down the road we ran a new road through some area of the downtown commercial business district?
First, you'll have to go through appraisals and purchase properties if we're realigning roads in the downtown district. That'll be a significant undertaking environmentally and zoning and planning wise. We did do concepts and cost estimates of that several years ago, but now with Cherrywood Point, the new Lighthouse Loft site, the expansion, water treatment plants, the redevelopments in the TIF district created south of Wells Fargo, you're pretty much going to be where your road alignments are today. Because I think were you talking about the split pair? Is that what question kind of you're thinking about in the back of your head?
I'm just trying to anticipate a possibility that,
you would have a massive land acquisition problem that's way outside of what we're talking about tonight.
I'm just trying to anticipate the potential that this could get somebody into trouble. Maybe not us, maybe not me as a council member, but that this could get somebody into trouble at some point down the road.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, you had your hand up earlier and yes, absolutely. Councilmember Valento, please.
Thanks. I agree with Councilmember Bystrom. And when she talked about slippery slope, I'm concerned with kind of naming a street and dropping it to 20%. And then what would not force other areas and other property owners to become enraged that theirs is at 100% and they didn't get dropped to 20%. So I think we need more time to go through this. I mean, who wants gravel roads where they are? That needs to be changed, but I think it's more important to take a step back and get community input and make sure we're not stepping on any toes and kind of making sure we're not giving, I guess, like handouts. Because at that point, if you're dropping it to 20%, that's a significant burden put on the city and less of a burden put on the property owner. And that's concerning to me.
Other comments, questions? I guess I start with the foundation that for existing infrastructure, that should be the city's responsibility, that is part of our commitment to the community for existing infrastructure. And which is why I appreciate that if we have in our existing commercial district, if we have a significant reconstruction where we are making significant upgrades like we did with 15th, where we're, expanding the street significantly and we're, changing that we recognize it's a significant change and we partner with the property owners on an 80-20 split. It also recognizes that we are a growing community and we aren't going to get the growth that we want and that developers want if we are limited by our capacity to grow from a city. And so at that point, when we're talking about new, I've supported that should be 100% part of the development. Where I struggle, where it relates to these gravel roads, is there are areas of the city that I think, and our commercial district is one of them, that it's just been skipped and it should have been done 20 years ago. And so I would also say that there are other commercial areas that are today gravel roads that probably should not be. And that should be part of our challenge as we're working through the 10-year plan. There's some sequencing, I think, and I think, Ryan talks about Goodview Circle, that there isn't city sewer and water out there yet. And so it probably doesn't quite make sense in the development cycle to have a paved street. You'd want sewer and water to go in at the same time. So I think in some of our outlying areas, there are some good reasons on why we haven't changed the paving policy yet to incent that development. But I look at, there are some areas where we should be able to agree, and there is a current case to be made for what should have been done 20 years ago. But I appreciate also that it is a slippery slope, and we have to be careful in that we are committing to what we can financially commit to. But if my message to those business owners that are sitting out in some of those industrial districts that needs to be paved, well, I want that to be paved too. We just need to work that into the plan when we can, when it makes sense and when we're able to financially make that commitment. I think that's larger than what we're prepared to do tonight. But I also don't want to do another paving cycle. We just did every street but Fifth Avenue in that area. I'd love to be able to come back and get that right this time without skipping it for what's another cycle and another tough conversation. So I think this is not the final answer. I think this is the evolution of what needs to happen for, again, existing infrastructure, whether that's a gravel road or whether that's a paved road, and what's our future commitment for those streets and how we maintain it.
I don't disagree with that at all. This is more about writing something into policy that could come back to haunt somebody at some point down the road, and should it land here, and then my second question is, if we're dropping the construction of new commercial business district bituminous surface streets down to 20%, and that's going to be a permanent part of policy, why aren't we dropping the construction of the new commercial industrial bituminous surface streets down to 20% as well?
Well, then you start to still have the same argument where we require brand new residential streets at 100%. So that what you're doing is getting into policy cul-de-sac. You're going round and round, because now you you change a commercial, brand new commercial industrial, say somewhere in Headwaters, we have brand new ones or something, and that it's coming from a dirt road, then you're saying, okay, well, we'll guarantee 80% of the cost of that. Then what stops the residential developers is saying, well, we're putting in residential roads, we should be paying 80% of that as well. So
I think you're making my point for me, Patrick.
I know, but I mean, it is, I'm not saying slippery, so I'm saying you're getting yourself in a circle because you're starting to look at the entire policy. You know, it would be real easy if everything was 100% flatted, that's all you're gonna get, or everything was 50%, or everything was whatever. But right now, the way the council has in the past, and it makes perfect sense on brand new roads because they're not existing now. There's no infrastructure underneath them, there's no water, there's no sewer, there's nothing. Whereas new commercial or residential developments, they're having to start from scratch, put the stone and the pipes and everything, and that makes sense to be 100% because the developer is the one making the money on whatever that development, and if they're not making money, they won't develop it. So that's just my 2 cents.
And it's the unique opportunity to build those costs into the cost of the development. That neighborhood that's going to benefit from those streets, you build it.
It's a direct cost to that neighborhood.
Right. Councilmember Husnick, you've had your hand up and I'm not ignoring you. Go ahead.
Thank you. To me, it's maybe I'm too simple-minded, but it's really the difference between a rebuild and a build. That's really what it amounts to. We've gone over several streets and do whatever to maintain what's already there. And we've, I guess most of them have been a 20% policy, but it's a lot different than what Patrick just talked about in a development, where you're putting in the whole infrastructure. That's a big deal, and it has to be part of that development. But it's not the same thing. So as far as I mean, I don't see anything wrong with the policy the way it's written. I'm not afraid of the way it's written. So my 2 cents.
Councilmember Byström, you asked the question about why wouldn't we change the policy for the all commercial industrial? Why are we just carving out this district? And I guess I'm of the opinion that that's a conversation for another day. That there are some considerations on some of those streets that we need to be aware of which would likely redevelop faster if we were to change that policy, and is that a good thing given where we are with sewer and water and some other considerations. And I also recognize that this is a big enough conversation that I'm not sure, I'm a little concerned that it's going to be a long time for council to be in a position to have perfect alignment with all of the commercial districts and residential. And so I guess I would advocate for some incremental change on some areas where we can, comfortably identify, here's what our commitment is. And I feel like we're at that spot there. And I think it's just a question of, is that enough to take action, or do we need some broader context? So.
No, I don't want to bog this down. I mean, I'm in 100% agreement that it should get done. I'm just looking at this through, I think we are on the same, we're headed to the same destination. I just would like, I would like to see a different path, to that destination. I feel like this is, I'm just uncomfortable with the way this is written. But I probably won't be here 12 years from now to have to deal with it. So if it comes up again, somewhere down the road. So I don't want to bog it down, with the language. I'm concerned about that. So.
Yeah. I guess I would ask the question back to staff, to that concern, is there an opportunity for us, we're going to talk about the 10-year plan tonight. Is there an opportunity for us to talk about, as part of the build out on that 10-year plan, some additional, so those streets that are outside of the planned district for tonight, that are commercial or industrial? Is there opportunity to work some of that in? Or are we so over capacity 10-year plan that it's
I tell you,
not in there?
To be quite honest with you, if you talk about brand new commercial and industrial construction.
Not
So-
brand new, existing gravel, like Goodview.
Well, existing
Goodview, so-
gravel, but that's a brand new road, whether it's a brand new place or it's gravel. Our streets are in pretty poor condition. I think we came back and showed you an indication of, on a scale of 1 to 10, what they look like. In order just to get the paved streets to some place where they are in good shape, average shape, we are, we'll talk about the 10-year plan in a minute here, but you saw some of the early figures on the 10-year plan and what that might take to get us to where we think we might need to get. And I can't recommend making any changes on any other gravel roads in the city. Because you start fooling around with commercial industrial gravel roads, and then we have residential gravel roads, and yeah, we've got so much needed to be done. I don't know how we would do it.
Some other things just to consider is when you look at the overall map where a lot of your major stretches of gravel road still exist, those are all within your new approved MUSA boundary that was revised during your last comp plan process. So that therefore now opens the floodgates of where development can go at the density the Met Council allows. So also in that area, we already are seeing applications starting to extend in that area. And if you're familiar with your future land use plan, is much different than what you have today. Like very significant different. I mean, there was a 180-degree turn on your future land use plan. So when you start talking the south part of town, that's all commercial or, land-based like that versus before it was all residential. You only were expecting residential to grow to the south. That did a 180-degree change. And obviously that area has no infrastructure, no ponding, infrastructure, sewer and water won't be down there in 10, maybe even not even 20 years down to the south end of the city. That's all outlined in your staging plan too, in your comp plan. So when we get down those areas and those outskirts of town and start filling in with developments, and Forest Lake's a relatively young community, lots of potential development still after the merger of the township, on the 35 interstate corridor, you still got Blaine and Hugo and White Bear even, still developing, but as that stuff keeps pushing forward, we'll continue to slowly fill in those gaps, which will make these conversations in the future easier for you guys because you'll have less lineal feet to deal with. And right now, because if you blanketed everything down the south part of the town, obviously that's very expensive, but also then you're kind of controlling where roadways are going to go without the developer being able to lay out the land or readjust some of these gravel roads. Because basically how a gravel road was built, they excavate the ditch, so all the clay poor soils are thrown up in the middle of the road, shaped it, and threw some class 5 on it. And that's why they get so spongy in the spring, because of the freeze-thaw cycles. And why out in those areas, the assessment is at 100%. One, because it's not ready for expansion of developments. Utilities aren't there. And you're basically going to have to start from scratch and build a whole new full road section anyways. So there's just a lot of limiting things when you get farther out, and you should be familiar with your future land use map as it's changed significantly south of Headwaters Parkway.
Yeah, that new land use map does have a lot of that converting to commercial industrial. Council, additional questions or any action we would like to take this evening?
Mayor Bain, we're looking to approve tonight the gravel road assessment policy, correct? I just want to clarify.
As I understand the time, part of the timing is the consideration of this particular project and when plans and specs would come back from Ryan, which is a very, Ryan, are you bringing that back at the next council meeting?
No. If FIP's included, I'll need the time to engage the property owners to make sure they'll, because we're not going to have enough time to go through the 429 process. They're going to have to sign a waiver to forego that process if they're interested and want the project to move forward. So we would need them to sign off on that. Then we could come back in the second meeting in February to approve plans and specs. I mean, if they sign the dotted line, yeah, I could get there. But I'm expecting, because of economic times, that I'm going to have some difficult conversations with some of the property owners. Maybe they can't do this right now, or instead of, some of them could pay cash, could pay right away. They can. How come I can't ever remember this lately? How do you assess it to their taxes? What's the word I'm looking for? At what term you guys decide and what interest rate?
Right.
That's what this would all. So if they don't pay right away, but they got to sign the waiver to move forward, that they're going to acknowledge this is the maximum dollar amount I could be assessed. And yes, we want to go forward, hopefully get some better bids, and then you can adjust it accordingly with the unit pricing. And that's what would be required at payments day one, or they would have until the next time you got to assign it to their taxes. And then typically it's 10-year term. Sometimes it's 15, but I would recommend a 10-year term, and you have to decide the interest rate. And they can always prepay it. So if they all of a sudden had a really good year in business, they could pay it off early. Certified to their taxes. Is that what Pete said?
We certify it to the assessor, and it's then essentially a levy on their taxes, and they'll pay it off with their annual property taxes. Yeah, as Ryan was explaining.
And typically in the event property sold, it's negotiated that the seller will clear the assessments on the property. That's all negotiable, but that is, some frequent question.
So given that, oh, Councilmember Valento, go ahead.
So, question for Ryan. If we are giving the property owners one option and making them sign a dotted line, what would happen if this policy did get passed? What would happen if even one property owner didn't sign? And then how would the road move forward?
That would be a city attorney question.
Usually, I believe that you have to have 100% agreement. I don't think if one property owner, I think it's good policy. If you don't have all the property owners in this particular case, because there's so few of them, I don't think the road would move forward.
If you didn't go through the 429 process, that would be my recommendation, but legally, I don't know what the correct answer is.
Your Honor, members of council, Councilmember Valento, if you don't have 100% buy-in, you do have to use the 429 process, have an improvement hearing, approve that by a 4/5 majority vote in order to move forward with the project with the authority to assess.
And if that's the case, if one owner refused and we had to go through 429, it means the road gets delayed until 2022.
And does that mean that if it would get passed through the 4/5 vote, that the property owner who didn't sign would still have to pay?
Yes.
So they'd be forced to pay, even though they
Yes.
can afford it?
Yes, and it wouldn't happen again. Being that if we had to go through that process, there's no way we could include it in the 21 road project. We'd have to go to 2022.
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Pete.
Your Honor, Councilmember Valento, the way that the property assessments work, there is a ceiling on what those assessments are, regardless of what our policy says. We use the policy to establish the assessments, but at the end of the day, we're never allowed to levy an assessment that is more than the amount by which our new project increased the market value of their property. And so we are enriching their property value and charging them some portion of the cost of accomplishing that. And if they have trouble affording that on their property taxes, you're right, that can be a tipping point, perhaps in a very extreme circumstance, but I've not seen it happen that way. But there is a tie-in between what they're getting assessed and what we are doing for them on a pure economic level.
Another question.
Please.
Maybe Ryan already mentioned it, but does anyone know for a fact if every single property owner is willing to sign?
The last conversation I've had with the property owners, I believe it was at City Hall before COVID.
Yep.
All of them were in favor of it and wanted to see where the 20% would come in. Other than the very northwest parcel, which is open vacant land owned by, I believe, an elderly couple. But the property owners on the south said they were willing to help out that property owner to make the project move forward.
This one question of confirmation of process, and then just a comment from me on this kind of just this line, or kind of where this conversation is turned. So I want to make sure that if all of those waivers are not signed, and if we are going to go through an assessment process, council does have another opportunity to pull back from a project. We aren't committing ourselves by approving this policy change tonight to the paving of a project. There is a series of approvals that are still needed, A, on the project itself, but B, also on the assessment plan related to that project. Is that right? That we have that we still have that opportunity to make separate decisions?
Yes, you still have, like you said, the assessment, but you also have the approval of the plans and specs that will or will not include the road.
Yeah, I look at our decision tonight as what is from a policy level, what is our policy overall on this district? And not so much project based. Yes, it's coming to the table because of an opportunity for a project, but I would, I feel I'm only able to speak for my vote on council, and council is only able to speak to council. There's a whole, a number of property owners that also need to come to the table and reaffirm their commitment. And I think us changing the policy tonight is just saying we are willing to have this project move forward. They may or may not they may or may not decide it's the right time for them, and those are individual decisions they make. I think in supporting this tonight, I'm just supporting that we are open to a new policy that would allow potentially a project to happen.
Mayor Bain, I'd like to make a motion to approve the gravel road assessment policy. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me.
I'll second it, Mayor.
We have a motion from Councilmember Munson and a second from Councilmember Husnick. Further discussion? I will just acknowledge the conversation we've had so far, and that this is, we need to continue to evolve this, and we need to continue to be thoughtful on what is our plan. But I do think that if we have an opportunity to correct a small section of our community, I think that for that reason, I'll support this tonight. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick?
Aye.
Councilmember Munson?
Aye.
Councilmember Byström?
Aye.
Councilmember Valento?
Nay.
Councilmember, Mayor Bain?
Aye. Motion approved. That ends our action item, our action agenda for this evening. We do have one item for discussion purposes, and that is a revisit of the 10-year comprehensive plan update. Patrick, do you want to walk us through this?
I will. I didn't present anything or put it in the packet, but we had a conversation again last time regarding where we should be going with the 10-year plan and what your concerns might be. So just to have the discussion about what I believe, how we should move this forward and what the next steps should be, I'm considering, I think we should go back to Ellers and ask them for some alternatives to what we presented the first time. And B, I think we should include some of the placeholders that the park committee requested. With those two things in mind, once we have the placeholders in place for the parks, and if there's anything else that comes up, then we'll be able to talk to Ellers about a different way to structure the 10-year plan. Do we need to go out to a 15-year plan, a 20-year plan, a 25-year plan, a 30-year plan? Should we consider front-loading a lot of this because of interest rates? I mean, interest rates are still historically low. Should we be looking at a major bond issue way up in front to take some of the pressure off the back end of this? So we'll be asking to sit down with Ellers and make some of those considerations. Again, we have such high demand for our capital improvement needs, whether it's the roads, whether it's future buildings, whether it's current buildings, whether it's the park system, whether it's the golf course, whatever the case may be, that the way it was presented, there's no way I believe that council would ever approve that kind of raises in taxes and structure. So I propose that we go back to Ellers, see what other kind of alternatives we can come up with as far as the staging of those projects, whether it's, like I said, up front loaded or it's spaced out a little bit longer, and see what we come up with and have them come back and present that to the council. So yeah, I would like your input based on what you've seen so far and if you have ideas of what we should be looking at.
I think that makes sense for a variety of reasons. And I think it's been a while, first of all, since we've discussed this, and it would be nice to have a refresh. But I think about Council Member Valento, who's just coming into this, you know, without a body of knowledge, and I think that would be helpful. I think the other piece for me is I'd also like to somehow kind of map out a vision for staffing. I don't know. I mean, I know we've got a PD. We need a succession plan for. I know when you did a survey of staff, Patrick, you had a pretty long list. You know, what does that look like and why?
Yep.
So, you know, just to take a look at that along with, you know, those capital needs as well. So
yeah, I agree. I think we can provide the staffing pretty quickly. You know, in a staffing proposal, you know, I would recommend not going out too far with that because of the way things change. You're probably looking at a 5-year plan on staffing. What kind of staffing we need, where's the shortfalls, and how we get there. So that's an easy part. I can probably tell you that off the top of my head if I wanted to, but I will wait.
Yeah, again, it's difficult to have a crystal ball. We don't know where things are going, right, you know, 3, 4, 5 years out, but I think we can take a look at it.
Yeah, there are still some real needs in as far as staffing wise goes in this organization. You know, I sent you all an email regarding one of those and what we needed to do last week, and we plan to move forward with that. But there's at least 2 or 3 very critical staffings that we probably should take a hard look at in the next 3 years, or maybe even 2.
And I think that just paints a much more comprehensive picture for us.
Yeah, I agree.
As we're trying to make these decisions. So
I agree.
2 things come to mind. One is there are some projects listed on the plan where some additional definition would be helpful. And I know it's come up a couple of times in community conversations. You know, exploration of a second fire station, for example, jumps to mind. I know once we get the park plan in, some additional definition around what do some of those details look like. So just some kind of a high level tour of projects, if you will,
sure,
would be helpful. But then also staff's staff's priorities from a staff perspective of what are the rocks that can't move? Like what is these have to happen in this sequence versus I think some of these items fit in place because they fit in place, and what's movable and what isn't, I think will give us some good guideposts.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely correct. We know there's are certain things in the water utility, sewer utilities that can't move that we have to address. But how we stage the roads, or when we build a building, or if we build a building, or if we, expand some other thing, those we can explain.
And then, go ahead.
I would say, and if we were to front load this in some way, because we know money is pretty cheap right now, what would that look like? I mean, what would the plan be? What would those dollars look like, and what would the plan for those dollars be?
Yeah, that's the large one, is if we front load it, how much do we front load it? How much do we need? What does that do to the debt service? How does that fit in? And how does that alter the 20, the next 30 years, really? I mean, if you're talking about roads. So yeah, those are big items.
Agree. Other questions or kind of comments around process for next steps 10-year plan? I suspect the 10-year plan becomes 15 to 20 years. But I think this next process that we've talked about will help to kind of us to sequence. And then what we haven't done, this has been a process of, getting the inventory out there. What we haven't spent a lot of time in is the prioritization or sequencing or the gut check of, for each of those, projected levy amounts each year, what are we comfortable with? So
Correct.
there's some.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point that we need to explain some of the projects a little better. I mean, when we talk about a fire station, that was thrown in because if we're building a building, should we consider possibility of adding a fire station for the future instead of one where, it might be more cost efficient to at least build the space, not house it, but to build the space. So those are some of the discussions you should have.
Washington County introduced us to the topic of road diet. So maybe this is 10-year plan diet, right?
Could be.
Here's where we start, but here's where we end up.
And to be honest, the road plan, that gets mapped out probably longer than 10 years, probably closer to 20 to 25, but we'll see how that lays out. And like you said, how the taxes and the bondings work.
Right.
And just to note, I was going to do this in my report, but we've been notified by Representative Detmer that there's going to start solicitations in May and June for the 2022 bonding period. So if you all recall, we got funded on the last bonding, and for the first time submission we ever submitted. So we're right back in that cycle again, where we're going to come to council and say, here's what we recommend you we ask for it at the state. And I think we now have a better idea of what kind of projects qualify for those dollars, and it really wastewater, water, those kind of things are really attractive ones. And so we'll gather as a staff and make some recommendations to you so that we can get that submitted sometime in early May or June.
Very good. Council, any further requests or thoughts on this? Patrick, do you have what you need of us?
I do. It's going to be we're still in a long period for this. So, but I think it's good that we're working through this and slowly and carefully, and so everybody understands where we're going.
Yes. I would amend slowly and carefully with also enough of a picture of what we need to do for the 2022 budget, which is going to get cranked up here sooner than we think. So.
Yep. Agreed.
Very good. Let's move on to staff updates. Let's start with Patrick and then go to Dan.
Yeah, I already mentioned the bonding bill. We had a meeting with the senior board last week to continue the talk about transitioning that process in-house to somebody new. I've corresponded with the council regarding the utility billing and the system, and beginning steps on possibly bringing that back into house to operate. You will be seeing more of that as the weeks go by here, as we know more. We have been talking to Foursome Golf about a renewal of the golf course. We've got still are negotiating, so there's really nothing to report there yet. And we will be talking to the restaurant regarding the parking situation and where we want to go as soon as that's kind of all one piece. And then I already talked to you about the bonding bill, so I think that's all I have.
Very good. Patrick, or any questions for Patrick? All right, we'll move to Dan and Chief Peterson after Dan.
I have no updates unless you have questions for me.
Dan, so how did the EDA heard the EDA Downtown Working Group heard presentations from the downtown planners that were proposed, 2 downtown planners that were proposing on our RFP. How did the second conversation go?
It got abruptly cut short due to the fact that when we cut meetings, Zoom kicked us all out. I tried to start a second meeting. I got a portion of that group back in. They did a little bit of a wrap up, but it was not the full group that was in the first meeting. Okay. So we did not have any kind of after consultants left discussion. So I'll move that to the next EDA meeting agenda and front load that with that conversation there. But unfortunately, everybody got kicked out again. So Zoom technology issues happened.
Can you send our apologies to the Cunningham group they were virtually done, but we didn't get a very nice conclusion.
I was actually able to meet with them. They were in the meeting. They joined right back
good.
in. So I was able to speak with them personally. So yeah, we're okay. We're okay.
Perfect. Very good. Any questions for Dan this evening? All right, Chief Peterson and then Chief Newman.
Mayor and City Council members, I have a couple items for you tonight. First, our police personnel, along with fire personnel, have been notified earlier today that either their first or second vaccinations are being scheduled over the next 2 weeks. As you know, both our police and fire personnel are certified first responders. So that is why they are being vaccinated now during phase 1. Secondly, we have finally received our body-worn cameras this week. We will be deploying them to all our police personnel, and we'll have them trained on them in the next few weeks. Though you approved the purchase and implementation of the body-worn cameras almost 3 months ago, they have been on back order due to shutdowns in their manufacture during the pandemic. So we are really happy and pleased that we finally got them and we can put them into use. Other than that, that's all I have for you tonight, unless you have questions for me.
Chief, any questions for Chief Peterson this evening? All right, Chief Newman and
Good
Pete and
evening.
Amanda after Chief Newman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have 3 updates for you tonight. Our first update is that we've scheduled our first joint fire board meeting of the year for February 11th at 7 p.m. and that will be a Zoom meeting. And we ended our year with 495 calls for service for 2020. And that was actually a 7.5% reduction over the previous year. For 2019 was 535 calls. And so I'm currently analyzing the data to see what I can determine was the reason for the reduction in calls, but I think that COVID had an impact. When COVID started impacting us, calls for service for about a 2-month period, we've seen a huge reduction. So I think that's going to be where that reduction came from. And then the last update is currently we're accepting applications for the position of paid on call firefighter. We will look to hire up to 5 firefighters with a start date of 7/1/21. And applications are available on the city website under the fire department section. And that's all I have for updates, unless you have questions for me.
Excellent. Any questions for Chief Newman this evening? Seeing none, Pete, and then we'll go to Donovan after.
Your Honor, Council, the only thing I would like to note is an observation of the year or so we've been in the remote environment. outside of the remote environment, all of the council have pretty regular access to city attorney to chat about anything big or small that they want to get my attention on, or just a question. They always wondered how something worked. And that's not available in this environment. It's still important to manage information, but understand that I am here. And so if there's something you'd like to know, you want to reach out, let Pat know. And then if he doesn't know the answer, he could put you in touch with me. I still think it should go through Pat or the mayor in any given board of multiple decision makers. But I just want to make sure you all know that I am here to answer questions if you have them. And if Pat doesn't have the answer right off the bat when you ask him.
And
Thank you.
go through Pat. Go through Pat. I don't need to know, and then it keeps me out of the loop. Excellent. Any questions for Pete this evening? All right, moving on to Donovan, and then Sandy after Donovan.
Hi, Mayor, members of council. I don't have an update, but I'm available for any questions you might have.
Any questions for Donovan this evening? All right, Sandy and Jackie after Sandy.
I have nothing more to add unless somebody has something for me.
Anybody for anything for Sandy this evening? All right, Jackie, welcome. Meeting number 2, and just want to give you an opportunity to see if you have anything for council this evening.
Thank you. I've just been plugging away on the senior center. I got all the voicemails taken care of. Everybody called back, going through all those files and getting together a list of everyone to contact.
Excellent. Very good. Does anybody have anything for Jackie this evening? Not seeing any. Karen.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I don't have any updates this evening.
Any questions for Karen? I did have a question. The League of Minnesota Cities Elected Official Conference is still open. The registration, I think, ends the end of this week. It's all virtual this year. Karen, can we send instructions to you to get us registered, or should we register individually?
I think I'm not sure what's easier from a finance standpoint. So Sandy, do you have any ideas what would be easier from a finance standpoint if council just registers themselves? Is it easier to reimburse them then, or is it easier for me to register them and then we just pay that through the city?
I guess it really,
either way, but
yeah, either way, whatever makes it easier for everybody, I guess. It really doesn't matter one way or the other as far as finance goes.
Yeah, I think
the registration did look, go ahead.
I think when you register, what happens is you're using your email, and so they send you the registration link directly. So I'm thinking it might be easier if you register yourself and then submit that receipt or whatever to, you can send it to me, and then I can get that into finance so you guys get reimbursed for that.
Is there
Otherwise, they're going to send the registrations to me, and I'll be forwarding the registrations. And
is there a PO option? Purchase order option? They could bill the city directly?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I did not.
I don't think
see
they
that.
do. Yeah, I think it's just a direct pay when you get online.
As a comment, I'm looking at it right now, and I noted that the online registration is closed because it goes for 6 weeks, and this week is the first week.
I wonder if that is a different deadline for the new electeds versus the experienced elected conference.
It might be because they do 2 different conferences.
There might be. Hannah, were you able to get registered?
I haven't contacted them because the one for the new is online, so I'll have to find an email to email someone and see if I could get registered for it.
Look and see.
Some of those sessions are later on, so maybe there's still an opportunity to get in.
Yeah, I'll look at it and I'll look at it and I'll forward council some information. We'll see if, I know they do 2 different ones, so.
Perfect. Council update, or Karen, anything else for council, and council, anything for Karen?
I do have a question though, and maybe I shouldn't bring this up now, maybe I can just talk to Pete about it later, but at the last council meeting, we had discussed with these licenses, the liquor tobacco licenses, we had talked about that being, if in the event of suspension, that's a 2020 license that we were talking about. So I don't want to go into a conversation about it now, but we had talked about the difference between the 2020 license and the 2021 license that they all have now. So how suspensions be handled at that point, if council went that direction.
Your Honor, Council Karen, real quickly, by law, when you suspend, the council dictates the time period in which the suspension is served. And so you could dictate that it be served the next day or the next month or whatever. It will happen in 2021, and that's fine, should council make that choice.
That was the only question I had.
Very good. Let's transition to council updates. We'll start with Councilmember Hesnick and then Councilmember Munson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the EDA meeting tonight, as you did, to talk, along with the Downtown Committee Working Group. And I think Marta will probably expand on that. So we'll not beat that horse anymore. And also, a few days ago, I met with Patrick about our utility billing. Met in his office here because something wasn't right with our billing. And I thought, we don't need this trouble with everybody else, and found out lots of people are having problems. And so this is going to be for a future conversation. But it certainly needs to get resolved. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, agree. Councilmember Munson and then Councilmember Byström.
Sure. So I have a couple of updates. I was not able to attend the FLA meeting as it was at the same time of our workshop last week, but I did attend the Planning Commission meeting. And I know we received some emails regarding the preliminary plan for the apartment complex that is just north of the current Timber Ridge. And I just wanted to let everyone know that the Planning Commission tabled that for a later date to have the developer come back with a different plan. There was a lot of input from community members as well, so that was really good. And then the other, it's not necessarily an update, but I just want to publicly thank Eric Langness. His term has come to an end, and he is taking some time away, but want to thank him publicly for his service and his dedication to the city. And he just can run a meeting so well, I have to say. He does such a nice job. So thank you.
Yeah, I echo your comments. And he also has done a fantastic job of public engagement. Just, I think our participation and our level of feedback that EDA or that the Planning Commission is receiving is just, we're just getting a lot more volume and a lot more just information to the public on what's happening. And he does it in a very factual way. That's just, that engagement period. Actually, it's a great model for Dan and Jackie to take a look at, just around notification and just providing some basic information that sometimes our other channels of communication miss. So, yes.
He also does a nice job for what can typically be a very technical meeting in the Planning Commission of stopping and explaining to residents what's happening. And so I really appreciated that at that meeting.
Agree. Very good. Any questions for Councilmember Munson tonight? All right. Councilmember Byström and then Councilmember Valento.
Just a couple updates for me. I attended the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission meeting. Commissioner Terry Steenblock was reappointed to the chair position. They had Jamie Mouche presented on a potential partnership with Forest Lake Area Schools Community Education around some summer programming. And the commission approved that. There will be some, I kind of yet undefined, but potentially some yoga in the park classes, some Zumba, some kids classes, potentially paddleboard lessons, those sorts of things down at Lakeside Park. They had a lengthy discussion around the skating rinks and the warming houses, and did ultimately make a determination to have both of the warming houses open at some level, of course, following the governor's orders with regard to capacity. But they just felt that it was really important to have them both open with the need for that outdoor recreation with COVID still prevalent. Ironically, I had received a phone call just prior to the meeting from a representative from Forest Lake Hockey Association who was curious about our commitment to the hockey rinks in the community. When the high school addition was built, especially that big gymnasium, they took a couple of outdoor hockey rinks down over there. So we are minus 2 rinks in the community. So this was a great opportunity for the commission, I think, to have something else to consider where their 10-year plan is concerned. The Hockey Association has a really committed group of parents, and they also have some money that they are interested in spending on improving either the Tower Park rinks or potentially adding some additional rinks as well. So we had some conversation around that. And then I attended the YMCA meeting. Just a couple of high points from that. Their food distribution program continues and the demand is high, continues to be high. They are open at some level, beginning youth sports with about a 50% capacity, still needing reservations for their group and water exercise classes, lap swims, gym usage, and kids stuff. But reservations are not required for the use of their exercise equipment. They are offering some virtual YMCA programs, so you can hop on the internet, even Facebook Live. You can hop on Facebook Live and participate virtually. And then some really great news with regard to the Youth in Government program. Nearly 600 students in Minnesota participated over the course of the last, just this last weekend, I believe it was. Mara might be able to clarify that a little bit. And I know several Leela students, Forest Lake students, represented our community very, very well. They were appointed to a variety of leadership roles within the Youth in Government program. And again, Mayor Bain is intimately aware of the Youth in Government program. Her daughters participate, but we were, as a community, our youth were represented very, very well in that program. So just wanted to report that out, and that's all I have.
They had Leela representation as well as Forest Lake Area Schools representation. So it's good to see from both, and a very strong program that even remotely they did well. So.
Great.
Just a couple of quick updates. As Sam mentioned, EDA and the downtown group heard from 2 different downtown planning groups, and we'll at our next meeting circle back on that feedback and direct staff as to next steps. I'm incredibly encouraged by what I heard tonight. Both very strong planners, and both, in my opinion, could do a great job for us. So it's good to have options, and look forward to moving that forward at a future EDA meeting. Also continue to participate in the now weekly kind of planning stage that the Everyone Belongs group is in. And again, it's that partnership between the city, Forest Lake Area Schools, and the YMCA. They are driving towards a framework and plan to be at least sketched and in strong draft mode by the end of February. We're still on track for that. And the goal would be to pull that broader group of 50 together to go over that plan in mid-March. And so look forward to bringing that back This topic that we are talking about tomorrow is about sustainable organization, and of course, a topic that is of importance to us as a city as we think about how does the city fit into this. This is night one of 3 scheduled nights to talk about that topic, and so I look for some additional input points and also hearing more about how we might partner with other both municipalities or townships and counties within the footprint of the Forest Lake School District, along with the school district of the YMCA. So there's a number of different options that are being considered. And that's all I have for tonight. I am getting a message that I maybe missed staff updates from Ryan and also Dave, I think. Ryan, my apologies. And before we adjourn, let's hear from you.
And Councilmember Valento as well.
Mayor, City Council, I guess I'll just update on some projects that are kind of in motion already that you've approved. Water treatment plant 2, our next steps there is to have the pre-construction meeting. Therefore, we'll then obtain the contractor's schedule we can share with you. The regional stormwater study that was completed down in the headwaters area is being presented to Rice Creek Watershed Board Wednesday. And then after that, we'll be bringing that back to presentation to you guys. Probably over the next several months, depending on also what I hear Wednesday with the Met Council informational session and the grants there. There's a couple grants we're pursuing right now with the Met Council for the sewer work, and then the LRIP application for our local share, County State Aid Highway 33. So you'll see a lot of random approvals, paperwork coming forward with some of that stuff in the future. We did receive our state aid allotment today. It's a lot better than what they originally projected in the midst of middle of COVID. You know, at first they were projecting a 15% reduction down to a 9%. We came in a little better than that. So, but we are $114,547 less than what we received in 2020. So we're kind of back to the same levels as what we received in 2017. So big hits. Luckily, we budgeted low compared to what we received over the last several years on the construction side of things. So we're still kind of right there. Our maintenance side did take a bigger hit, which will be a smaller, you know, typically what comes out of that is our seal coat, crack filling, or double chip sealing projects. So we'll just have to adjust accordingly. And that's kind of what I have for now. Obviously, you see and hear some development activity that's going on with the plots approval tonight. You know, that's gonna be a nice area to finish out. That's been sitting since 2008 when it was graded with the construction of phase 1. So with that, I'll open up with any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ryan? And it'll teach me to shut my list off and think I've just got the order, because I don't, because I also missed Councilmember Valento. Hannah, my apologies. Update for us this evening.
I attended the Rush Line Corridor meeting last Thursday, and they gave an update that the environmental assessment is in the hands of the federal authorities, and they should be getting that back at the around springtime this year. As an interesting note, along that 15-mile bus route, they found 28 historical properties, and community members are super intrigued to find out what those properties are. And one is a roadway that is still intact from decades ago. So that'll be kind of cool to hear what those are.
Interesting.
Might be the old military road coming out of St. Paul up to Duluth. That they found portions of that all the way out into Marine and up through there and through Scandia, then kind of disappears here and there. This is what I hear from other communities too, you know, crossing these paths. The old wagon wheel, we have a portion of that under Highway 61 that's all concrete, you know, so anytime that you guys see the roadway out there today, underneath that was part of the old wagon wheel.
Fascinating. At some point when the time is right in that project, Councilmember Valento, we should bring representatives from that group to Forest Lake just to do a workshop of the Rush Line project corridor overall, the plan for Forest Lake, which as I understand it is at this point kind of a future phase dotted line. But we should, just do an update workshop. We've had turnover on our council, and I know the project has moved along. Actually, it was early in my first term the last time we did do an in Forest Lake update. And so when the time is right for that project team, I'm happy to put it into a workshop agenda, just to council education and just a community update.
Definitely.
Excellent. Any questions for Councilmember Valento this evening? Have I missed anybody? All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion from Councilmember Munson and a second from Councilmember Husnick. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
Councilmember Valento.
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for this has been a longer meeting, so appreciate all of the attention and the great conversation tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you.